The taste of betrayal was sharp and sour as I stood there, staring down at the photographs spread out on our mahogany dining table. That same table had been the center of our life together, 3 anniversaries celebrated there, quiet dinners, promises whispered late into the night. It was where Olivia once locked eyes with me and swore we were forever, while the Chicago winter screamed outside the windows, mirroring the chaos tearing through my chest. What churned inside me felt like a full-blown storm, anger and heartbreak colliding hard enough to threaten every memory we'd built in our upscale Lincoln Park home. My name is Ethan Blake. I'm a successful auto shop owner, former military special operations, the kind of guy who built everything from the ground up with his own 2 hands. The business. The house. The life everyone thought was perfect. That included the marriage Olivia seemed more than willing to throw away for cheap hotel rooms and a man 5 years younger than her. So when she finally worked up the nerve to ask the question that had been hanging between us for weeks, that Tuesday evening in November, I was ready. I'd been ready for exactly 27 days, 17 hours, and roughly 9 minutes, the precise amount of time since I'd confirmed what my gut had been screaming at me for months. "Why don't you want me anymore, Ethan?" she asked. Her voice shook as she stood in our kitchen, still dressed in her tailored charcoal suit from work. Her makeup was flawless, like always. Blonde hair fell perfectly over her shoulders, every strand in place. Her manicured hands gripped the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slowly lifted my eyes from the imported Italian pasta I'd been pretending to eat, like none of this was already over. The fork in my hand suddenly felt heavier than it should have, like a weapon I was choosing not to use. I set it down carefully beside my plate. The soft tap of metal against porcelain sounded absurdly loud in the silence pressing in around us. Then I smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't the smile that had made her laugh and lean into me on our first date at Giordano's Pizza 6 years earlier. This smile was different. Cold. Controlled. A quiet acknowledgement that something once valuable had reached its end. "Because you gave away what was mine." The color drained from her face so fast it was almost surreal. That beautiful face, once the first thing I wanted to see every morning and the last thing before sleep, went pale right in front of me. Watching the life fade from it felt like watching a painting lose its color in real time. Her perfectly lined lips parted, stunned. Her blue eyes widened as the truth hit her all at once. She knew I knew. And still, I wasn't finished. Not even close. The confrontation I'd been rehearsing in my head for weeks had only just begun, and Olivia was about to learn that I wasn't the kind of man who collapsed and begged when betrayed. I was the kind who walked away intact and left the other person to drown in the fallout of their own decisions. It had all started 97 days earlier, on a rain-soaked Thursday night. Olivia had been working late, as usual, at Morrison & Hayes, the advertising firm where she'd recently landed a promotion to creative director. That alone wasn't suspicious. She'd always been ambitious, driven, obsessed with climbing higher. I supported that. I shifted dinners, moved anniversary plans, even pushed aside conversations about starting a family, also her career could come first. Then I saw the text. Her phone lit up while she was in the shower. "Just a preview. Just a moment. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. Still thinking about last night." The screen went dark almost immediately, but the words stayed burned into my mind, setting fire to every assumption I'd ever had about our marriage. I didn't confront her then. Training from military special operations teaches you patience. You observe. You plan. You gather intel. I wasn't scared of what I might uncover, I just wanted the truth locked down tight. When the moment came, I wanted facts, not guesses. And the facts were devastating. Final. Each day added more weight, like dirty snow piling up on a Chicago sidewalk. Receipts from restaurants I'd never stepped foot in, shoved carelessly into her purse. Hotel charges on a credit card she assumed I didn't check. Lingerie hidden in the back of her drawer. Black lace. Expensive. The kind she used to wear for me, before I apparently stopped being enough. There were phone calls that ended the second I walked into the room. Weekend emergencies that demanded her sudden presence at the office. Excuses stacked on top of excuses. Liam Donovan. That was his name. 34 years old to my 39. Creative director at Lennox Partners, a competing firm. A cliché if there ever was one. They met at an advertising conference in New York, right around the time I was breaking my back expanding my auto repair business to a second location in Evanston. While I was pulling 16-hour days, locking down financing, hiring staff, installing equipment, doing everything necessary to build the life she claimed she wanted, she was forming a connection with someone who supposedly understood her creative soul better than her mechanic husband ever could. That's when I hired a private investigator. Nathan Cole. Former police detective. Specialized in marital cases. I didn't hire him because I needed convincing, I hired him because I needed proof that would hold up if things went legal. Ray delivered. High-resolution photos of them entering the Waldorf Astoria downtown. Time-stamped logs of their meetings. Even audio recordings from public places that turned my stomach. All obtained legally. All impossible to deny. You sure you want to see all of this? Ray asked when he handed me the sealed envelope at a coffee shop a few blocks from my shop. His eyes carried the exhaustion of a man who'd watched too many relationships fall apart. Some people just want the summary. I need everything, I told him, sliding an envelope of cash across the table. No matter how bad it hurts. And it did hurt. Every photo landed like a punch. Olivia laughing over wine. Her hand brushing Liam's. The two of them stepping into a hotel elevator, they leaned close, clearly comfortable with each other. The timestamps told a clear story. 3 solid months, mapped out in cold numbers and dates. One entry hit harder than the rest: an evening when I'd been curled up at home with food poisoning, barely able to stand, while she told me she was stuck at a client dinner. From that point on, I moved through my days like a soldier operating behind enemy lines, keeping up the appearance of normal life through sheer discipline. I kissed her goodbye every morning, betrayal lingering on my tongue. I asked about her day during dinners she often skipped. At night, I lay beside her in bed, careful to keep my distance, unable to stomach the thought that another man's hands had traced the same curves I once believed were mine alone. Of course she noticed. "Are you okay?" she'd ask. "You seem distracted lately." Her hand would reach for mine across the kitchen island, the diamond on her finger flashing under the lights. The same ring I'd worked 2 years to afford while I was still scraping my business up from nothing. "Just work stress," I'd say, giving her a version of the truth that made the lie convincing. The new location's taking more out of me than I expected. Growing pains. She'd nod, sympathetic, maybe even relieved that I wasn't pushing back. Then she'd glance down at her phone, scrolling through messages I now knew had nothing to do with ad campaigns or client deadlines. Every once in a while, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her studying me. There was something in her expression, maybe guilt, but it never lasted. She'd smile instead, suggest we watch a movie, or make plans with friends for the weekend. The Parkers. The Millers. Couples who had no idea our marriage was already empty, held together by habit and my refusal to confront the truth before I was fully ready. The hardest moments were the nights she reached for me in the dark. I always found a reason to pull away. Too tired. Early meeting. Sore muscle from the gym. Each excuse pushed us farther apart, but the alternative, touching a woman who had already given herself to someone else, felt like surrendering my self-respect. I couldn't do it. My pride wouldn't let me, even when my body ached for the closeness we used to share. On her birthday in September, I gave her a pair of diamond earrings I'd bought months earlier, back when doubt hadn't yet poisoned everything. She cried when she opened the velvet box. Once, I would have taken those tears as happiness. Now I recognized them for what they really were. Guilt. That night, she wore the earrings to dinner at Alinea, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. We played our parts perfectly, smiling across the table like a couple who had it all, while an invisible gap stretched wider between us with every course. "You've been so distant lately," she said over dessert, a complicated arrangement of chocolate and cherries that cost more than some people make in a day. "I miss us." The irony nearly made me laugh. Instead, I reached across the table and took her hand, wondering if Liam had held it earlier that same week. "I'm right here, Olivia," I said smoothly. "Just busy with the expansion. It'll calm down soon." She seemed to accept that. Relief softened her face. We finished dinner, went home, and for the first time in weeks, she fell asleep curled against me. I didn't sleep at all. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, every breath weighed down by what she'd done. When the confrontation finally came, it didn't look anything like she probably imagined. There was no shouting. No smashed plates. No accusations loud enough to entertain the neighbors. That's what people expect from a guy like me. A mechanic with a military background. Rage. Loss of control. Something ugly and explosive. But that's not who I am. And it's not what the military trained me to be. Instead, I prepared a folder. Leather-bound. Embossed with the Blake Auto Repair logo. The kind you'd bring to a serious business meeting. In a way, that's exactly what it was. I treated the end of our marriage the same way I'd built my company, methodically, deliberately, with no room for mistakes. That night, when she came home late again, recycling the same tired excuses about clients and deadlines, I was already waiting in the living room. The lights were low. Just a single lamp casting shadows across the space between us. The folder sat on the coffee table like a live grenade. "Ethan, why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, unease creeping into her voice as she dropped her designer handbag and slipped out of the camel hair coat I'd given her last Christmas. I motioned to the armchair across from me, the one she always used on quiet Sunday mornings when we drank coffee together. "Sit down, Olivia. We need to talk." She hesitated, studying my face, then sat. Her legs crossed nervously. Her fingers smoothed her skirt, trembling. "What's going on?" she said. "You're scaring me." 3 years ago, I began, my voice steady despite my heart pounding. "You stood in front of 142 people and made vows to me." She swallowed, her throat tightening. "Of course I remember. What is this about?" "To love, honor, and cherish," I said. "To forsake all others." I slid the folder toward her with one finger, the way you'd push paperwork across a negotiation table. "Open it." Her hand shook as she reached for it, her nails scraping softly against the leather. The first page was our wedding photo, her in ivory lace, me in a charcoal suit, both of us smiling beneath an arch of roses at the botanical gardens. We looked like people who believed time was on our side. She turned the page and gasped. Photographs. Text message printouts. Hotel receipts. Time stamps. 3 months of betrayal laid out in perfect order, each moment documented with ruthless precision. I'd even included a timeline, matching the nights she spent with Liam against the nights she claimed to be working late. The pattern was impossible to deny. "Ethan, I can explain," she whispered. Panic flickered in her eyes as she flipped through the pages, the truth closing in on her from every angle. "No," I said, cutting her off before she could spiral any further. My tone wasn't cruel, just firm, the way you correct someone who reports to you when they've already crossed a line. You can't. And more importantly, you don't need to. The evidence had already done all the talking. Tears poured down her face, destroying the makeup that had been flawless minutes earlier. Mascara streaked her cheeks in dark lines as she shook her head. "Please," she said. "It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. Liam was it was only physical. There was nothing emotional." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my hands clasped tightly together. "Forgetting milk on the way home, that's a mistake," I said evenly. "What you did was make thousands of deliberate choices. Every text. Every lie. Every hotel room. Every time you looked me in the eye and said you were working late." I held her gaze. "Those weren't accidents, Olivia. They were decisions." That's when she collapsed. She dropped to her knees on our Persian rug, her designer skirt bunching awkwardly around her legs as she crawled toward me, reaching for my hands with raw desperation. I stood up immediately, stepping out of reach. I couldn't stand the thought of her touching me when she'd given that same closeness to someone else so freely. "I love you," she sobbed. Her face was wrecked now, the composed executive gone, replaced by a broken woman pleading on the floor of our living room. "Please, Ethan. We can fix this." She started bargaining. "We'll go to counseling. I'll quit my job. I'll never see him again. I'll do anything. Please don't throw away 3 years over one stupid mistake." I looked down at her, the woman I once believed I couldn't live without, the person who had been the center of my world, and felt nothing but a dull, hollow ache where passion used to live. The love hadn't vanished completely. That was the cruel part. It was still there, wounded and bleeding, buried under betrayal and shattered trust. "The problem isn't that I don't believe you're sorry," I said, my voice quieter now. "The problem is that I don't want to fix this. I don't want to stay married to someone I can't trust, someone who could do this while I was out there building a future for us." I walked to the hall closet and pulled out my packed duffel bag. 3 changes of clothes. Toiletries. My grandfather's pocket watch. Important documents. The rest could wait. "I transferred half of our savings into your account," I continued. "The house is paid off. You can stay here or sell it. That's up to you." I paused, then added, "My lawyer will reach out to yours tomorrow." "Divorce papers." Her voice came out small, almost childlike. "You're leaving me?" She sounded stunned, like she'd expected shouting, maybe even forgiveness after the explosion. "Just like that," she said. "You're not even going to try?" I shook my head. "No, Olivia. You left me weeks ago. You just didn't have the nerve to say it out loud." I headed for the door, my keys weighing heavy in my pocket. My hand was already on the knob when her voice stopped me. "Where will you go?" There was concern in her question, but panic too, like my destination might somehow change the finality of what was happening. I turned back one last time. She was kneeling on the floor, tear-streaked, disheveled, surrounded by proof of what she'd done in the home we'd built together. Despite everything, part of me wanted to remember her exactly like that. Not out of spite, but as a reminder of why I had to leave. "Somewhere I can breathe again," I said. That first night, I checked into the presidential suite at the Four Seasons downtown. It was indulgent, sure, but it felt right. If my marriage was ending, it wasn't going to end on a friend's sagging couch, listening to awkward sympathy and empty reassurances. I lay on 1,000 thread-count sheets, Lake Michigan stretching out beneath the window, staring at the ceiling for hours. I waited for the emotional collapse that never came. The pain was there, deep and pulsing, like an untreated wound, but alongside it was something I hadn't expected. Relief. The weight was gone. No more guessing. No more pretending. No more feeling like an outsider in my own home. The next morning, I called Gabriel Ortiz, my business partner of 7 years, the man who'd helped me turn a 2-bay garage into one of Chicago's most respected auto repair shops. "I need some time," I told him. "Can you handle both locations for a few weeks?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt as I watched sailboats glide across the lake. "Yeah, man." "Of course," he said. "Everything okay?" Gabriel wasn't just a partner. He was the closest thing to family I had since my parents passed 5 years earlier. "It will be," I said, and to my surprise, I meant it. There was a pause when I added, "Olivia and I are done. I'm filing for divorce." Silence. Then a low whistle. Damn. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't think it was that bad. "What happened?" "It doesn't matter," I said. "It's over." I wasn't ready to say the words out loud. Not yet. "I just need time to figure out what comes next." "Take all the time you need," he said. "The shops are solid. Torres has really stepped up in Evanston." He hesitated. "You need anything? A place to crash? Someone to drink with?" "I appreciate it," I said, "but I'm good." I've got a room for now. I'll check in tomorrow about the Westlake account. After the call, I ordered room service. I barely tasted breakfast. Then I made the next call to Caleb Knight, my attorney. He'd handled my expansion contracts. Now he'd handle the end of my marriage. Olivia called 37 times that day. I know the number because every missed call felt like another tick on a clock counting down the final death of our relationship. I didn't answer a single one. Her voicemails shifted as the day went on, from sobbing apologies to sharp accusations. How dare I leave? How dare I not give her a chance to explain? As if there was anything left to explain that the photographs hadn't already made brutally clear. By evening, her strategy changed. Text messages started coming through, one more frantic than the last. Please come home. We need to talk about this. I made a horrible mistake. Please don't throw everything away without talking. At least tell me where you are. I'm worried about you. That last message almost made me laugh. Worried about me now? After months of lying and sneaking around? The concern didn't feel like love. It felt like fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of what friends and family would think. Fear of a future that didn't match the one she'd planned out in her head. Caleb Knight was exactly what I needed: calm, efficient, and emotionally detached. We met for lunch at his downtown office the next day and went over my options with the same seriousness we'd once used to evaluate new business locations. Given what you've got here, he said, flipping through the photographs without so much as a reaction, we can push for a strong settlement. Illinois may technically be a no-fault state, but judges aren't blind. Infidelity matters, especially when it's this well documented. I listened, then surprised myself by saying, I don't want to punish her. I just want out. Clean, fair, and fast. Caleb raised an eyebrow as he closed the folder. Most people in your position want blood. They want the cheating spouse to feel it financially. I've seen enough blood in Afghanistan to last me a lifetime, I said quietly. I built my business from nothing once. I can do it again if I have to. Just make it fair. And make it quick. A few days later, Olivia's shock turned into desperation. She showed up at my original Blake Auto Repair shop on North Halsted, eyes red and swollen, hair pulled into a sloppy ponytail. She barely looked like the polished executive she usually was. In her hands was a bouquet of blue irises, my favorite flowers. The ones my mother used to grow in our backyard in Wisconsin before cancer took her from us too early. Gabriel stopped her at the customer counter. From my office window, I watched the exchange. Her hands moved frantically as she spoke. Gabriel listened, sympathetic but unmoving. Boss doesn't want to see you, he told her gently. Gabriel had sisters. He knew how to be kind even when saying no. Please, Gabriel, she pleaded. 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes. Her voice echoed through the garage, turning a few heads among the mechanics. Not my decision, Olivia, Gabriel replied. He's made his position clear. You should talk to your lawyer. His loyalty never wavered. It was one of the reasons our partnership worked so well. I stayed where I was and watched as my oldest friend calmly escorted my wife out of the shop. The woman who'd shared my bed for 3 years. The woman who knew about my nightmares from the war. The woman who'd held me together after I buried both my parents. Now she was reduced to begging for scraps of my time. There should have been satisfaction in that reversal, her chasing me after months of giving her attention to another man. Instead, all I felt was emptiness. When that didn't work, she went to our friends. The calls started coming in one after another, well-meaning voices full of confusion and attempts at mediation. She's a mess, Ethan, Dylan Parker said. My college roommate. Now a high-powered attorney with a corner office in the same building as Olivia's firm. She says it was a one-time thing. The photos cover 3 months, I replied calmly, staring out at Chicago's skyline from my hotel window. People make mistakes, Dylan said, slipping into the reasonable tone he probably used in court. 3 years of marriage is worth trying to save. They do make mistakes, I agreed. And now we're both living with hers. I softened my voice. I appreciate you calling, Dylan. But my decision isn't changing. My sister Mia was more blunt when she called from Seattle, where she'd rebuilt her life after her own failed marriage. You're really doing this? She asked. No counseling? No second chances? That doesn't sound like you. You've always been the fixer. Would you give him another chance? I asked, knowing exactly where that question would land. Her silence said everything. Jen had walked out 5 years earlier after discovering her husband's affair with his assistant. She never looked back. That's different, she finally said, though even she didn't sound convinced. Is it? I replied. Because betrayal feels pretty universal from where I'm standing. The call that surprised me most came from Olivia's mother, Margaret Hill. We'd always gotten along. She liked that I was steady. Reliable. That I'd given her daughter a stable life after Olivia's reckless college years bouncing between unreliable boyfriends. Ethan, she said softly, her Tennessee accent slipping through the line. I'm not calling to change your mind. You're not? I stopped pacing the hotel room. No, she sighed. Olivia told me everything. I raised her better than this. Her father and I are deeply disappointed, and that doesn't even begin to cover it. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about fixing the marriage, but about disappointment. About how the people you love can turn into strangers. About vows, and what it means when you break them. What will you do now? She asked at last. Start over, I said. Somewhere new. Chicago doesn't have anything left for me but reminders. You're a good man, Ethan, she said. I'm sorry she couldn't see what she had. Hearing that, from my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law, hit harder than all of Olivia's tears combined. It confirmed what I already knew. I deserved better. 2 weeks after I walked out, I put the Evanston location of my shop up for sale. Gabriel was stunned when I laid out my plans over whiskey and room service steaks in my hotel suite. You can't be serious, he said, setting his glass down hard enough to slosh bourbon across the table. We just got Evanston profitable. That expansion was your dream. I cut into my steak slowly, deliberately. Dreams change, I said. I need a clean break, I told him. There are too many memories here. Too many ties to a life I thought was real. Gabriel studied me for a long moment, then slowly nodded, accepting what he couldn't change. So where are you headed? Denver, I said. My buddy Julian Brooks has been trying to pull me into a partnership on a custom motorcycle shop for years. High-end restorations. Custom builds. The kind of hands-on work I loved before management swallowed my days. He let out a breath. Just like that? New city, new business, new life? There was admiration in his eyes, but concern too. What about your share of Blake Auto? I want you to buy me out, I said. You've earned it. You know the business better than anyone. He started to protest, but I kept going. 5 years. No interest. The Evanston location goes on the market. It'll bring in enough to give me a solid down payment for Denver. Gabriel stared at me, stunned. Ethan, that's too generous. The business is worth. I know exactly what it's worth, I cut in. And I know what your friendship is worth too. This feels right. You've earned your shot. We worked through the details until well past midnight, whiskey glasses emptying as the shape of my new life slowly came into focus. By the time Gabriel finally left unsteady on his feet but smiling, the separation from both my marriage and my business was no longer theoretical. It was real. The sale moved fast. The Evanston shop sat on prime real estate, and our reputation brought in multiple serious offers. My share was enough to buy into Julian's operation, put a down payment on a modern 3-bedroom house in the Denver suburbs, and still leave me with plenty of garage space for the restoration work I planned to do myself. Olivia found out through Gabriel's wife, Isabella. They shared a book club, and news like that travels fast, especially news involving divorce and a cross-country escape. She showed up at my hotel that night, pounding on the door until I opened it, bracing myself for another emotional ambush. "You're moving to Denver," she demanded, pushing past me into the room. The scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the bottle I'd given her on our first anniversary, hit me hard with memories I didn't ask for. "You weren't even going to tell me?" I closed the door quietly behind her, calm settling over me like armor. "I didn't think I needed to share my plans with you anymore." She spun around, eyes blazing beneath smeared makeup. 3 years of marriage, and you just walk away? You start a whole new life like I never existed? "You made your choice," I said, keeping my hands in my pockets to stop myself from reaching for her. "Now I'm making mine." "I made a mistake," she shouted, the polished executive mask finally shattering. "A terrible mistake, one I'll regret for the rest of my life." "Doesn't that matter to you at all?" I sat down on the edge of the bed, exhaustion washing over me. "It means you're human," I said quietly. "It means you're flawed, like everyone else. But it doesn't mean I have to live with those flaws." "So that's it?" Her voice turned sharp, searching for something to hurt me with. "You're the perfect husband who never messed up?" "I made plenty of mistakes," I said evenly, meeting her gaze. "But I never broke my vows. I never gave away what wasn't mine to give." That's when she collapsed. The fight drained out of her all at once as she slid down the wall and sank onto the carpet, pulling her knees in close like a child. "I still love you," she whispered. "No," I said gently, even though it hurt to say it out loud. "You love the idea of me. The security. The stability. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have been able to look me in the eye every day while sleeping with someone else." We sat in silence long enough for anger to fade into resignation. Eventually, she stood, smoothed her skirt with trembling hands, and wiped her face. "When do you leave?" "Friday." She nodded, then reached into her designer purse and pulled out a small velvet box. "I found this in your desk drawer," she said. I don't know what I was looking for. Answers, maybe. She set it on the desk by the window. "You should have it." I didn't need to open it to know what it was, my grandmother's sapphire ring. The one I'd planned to give her on our 5th anniversary. A family heirloom that had survived wars and economic collapse, only to become another casualty of our marriage. After she left, I opened the box. The hinge creaked softly as the deep blue stone caught the light, gleaming with a future that would never happen. I closed it and packed it away. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Denver greeted me with clear mountain air and the promise of a clean slate. The Rockies stood tall on the horizon, like silent guardians watching over what came next. Julian's shop, second gear, was everything he'd promised. Busy. Respected. Filled with riders who valued craftsmanship over shortcuts. Motorcycles lined the floor in various stages of restoration, from classic Harleys to rare European machines, all gleaming under industrial lights. "Man, I still can't believe you actually did it," Julian said with a grin as he showed me around on my first day. "When you called from Chicago, I figured you were just talking out loud." "Sometimes," I said, breathing in the familiar mix of oil and metal, already feeling at home, talk is what finally pushes us to act. On top of everything else, there's nothing quite like a blown-up marriage to make a man want to disappear and start over somewhere new. I buried myself in work like someone running flat out from his own memories, afraid to slow down long enough to let them catch up. The custom motorcycle shop was a whole different world from regular auto repair. It was more hands-on, more creative, and way more satisfying at a gut level. I had to relearn the fine details of motorcycle engines, earn the trust of clients who handed me machines they loved like family, and build new habits that didn't involve checking my phone for messages from Olivia. The little house I bought in Lakewood was rough around the edges, an outdated kitchen, carpet in the bathrooms, and a deck that looked like it might give up and collapse if you stood on it wrong. Working on the house gave my hands a purpose whenever my thoughts tried drifting back to Chicago and the life I'd walked away from. Every wall I painted, every tile I set, every piece of furniture I built felt like another step away from betrayal and closer to something I could call my own. Nights were the hardest part. An empty house has a way of amplifying your thoughts, and the quiet filled up fast with questions I didn't have answers for. Had I missed the warning signs? Was I so focused on building a future that I forgot to live in the present? What Olivia did was unforgivable, but that didn't stop me from wondering if I'd played a role in the slow breakdown of what we had. To quiet my head, I started running in the mornings, pushing myself up and down mountain trails until my lungs burned and my legs shook. Physical pain was easier to deal with than emotional damage. It made sense, responded to effort, and didn't ask complicated questions. 5 miles turned into 7. 7 became 10. On weekends, I'd push it to 15. As winter faded into spring in the Colorado foothills, my body got leaner and stronger, even if my heart was still catching up. 6 weeks after I moved, the divorce papers arrived by certified mail. Olivia had signed everything without arguing a single point, agreeing to the asset split exactly as my lawyer outlined. Her attorney included a handwritten note, Mrs. Blake wishes you to know she waives any claim to alimony or additional property beyond what's already been arranged. She asks only that you find happiness elsewhere. That should have felt like a win. It was the clean break I'd wanted, the freedom to move on without legal fights or money disputes. Instead, it felt empty, like winning a game no one actually wanted to play, holding a trophy that stood for loss instead of success. That night, I finally came apart. Alone in my half-finished house, surrounded by unopened boxes and unfamiliar shadows, I let myself fall apart completely. I cried for the life we'd planned and never got to live. For the kids we talked about, a boy with Olivia's blue eyes and my stubborn chin, a girl with her creativity and my determination. I cried for the woman I thought Olivia was, before betrayal revealed someone I barely recognized wearing my wife's face. The next morning, I got up before sunrise. I ran 10 miles through a spring snowstorm, took a shower so hot my skin turned red, and went straight to work on a 1969 Triumph Bonneville that needed a full restoration. One day at a time. One step forward. One broken part replaced with something rebuilt and stronger. That was the only way I knew how to move ahead. 3 months into my new life, a familiar face walked into second gear. Dylan Parker, my college roommate, stood there in a tailored suit and Italian loafers, looking completely out of place among grease, tools, and engine parts. "Surprise," he said awkwardly as I approached, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "What are you doing in Denver?" I asked, honestly shocked. Dylan was Chicago through and through, a third-generation local who claimed pizza sauce ran in his veins. "Conference at the convention center," he said. "Figured I'd stop by and see how you're holding up." He looked around the shop, clearly impressed. "Looks like you landed on your feet." I brought him back to the small office and poured him a cup of coffee from our ancient machine, which produced something that barely qualified as caffeinated. "I'm doing all right," I said. "How's Chicago?" He hesitated, and I knew right away he was about to say Olivia's name. Part of me wanted to shut it down and protect the fragile peace I'd built, but another part needed to know, like pressing on a healing bruise just to see how bad it still hurt. "She's not doing well, Ethan," he said. "Lost her job last month." That caught me off guard. Olivia had always been sharp, driven, good at navigating office politics. What happened? Started missing meetings. Showing up unprepared, Dylan explained. The firm covered for her at first because of her track record, but the final straw was a presentation to Bristol-Myers. She broke down, started crying and couldn't stop. Security had to escort her out. They let her go the next day. Dylan took a sip of coffee and grimaced. She's living with her parents now. Back in her childhood bedroom at 40. I let that sink in, waiting for the satisfaction I thought I might feel. It never came. Instead, I felt a messy mix of concern and something close to vindication, neither of which tasted very good. Liam dumped her, too, Dylan added. Right after you left. Turns out he wasn't looking for anything serious. Dylan studied me over the rim of his cup. He had a fiancée in New York the whole time. Olivia was just something on the side. The usual story, I muttered. The younger guy, secret meetings, and the predictable ending once consequences showed up. She made a huge mistake. We all do, I said quietly, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Some mistakes just cost more than others. Dylan stayed for dinner, filling me in on mutual friends and steering clear of more Olivia news unless I asked. We talked about our college days at Northwestern, motorcycle road trips before real life caught up with us, and basketball games where we yelled ourselves hoarse. For a little while, it almost felt like the old days, back before marriages, careers, and betrayals made everything complicated. Before Dylan headed back to his hotel, he reached into his jacket and handed me an envelope. It was cream-colored, thick, and clearly made from the kind of expensive paper you don't buy by accident. She asked me to give you this, he said. Told me you don't owe her a response. Just said she needed you to have it. I took it, but not eagerly. I'm not sure I even want to read it. That's up to you, he replied. I said I'd pass it along. That's all. He clapped me on the shoulder, the same show of support we'd shared back in college. You look good, Ethan. Better than I thought you would. What were you expecting? I asked. He hesitated. Honestly? Someone broken. That's how Olivia is. After he left, I sat there for hours, staring at the envelope, turning it over in my hands. I could feel the weight of the pages inside. Olivia's handwriting covered the front, my name written in that careful, elegant script that instantly brought back memories. Birthday cards. Notes tucked into my toolbox. Grocery list stuck to the fridge. Pieces of a life that no longer existed. Around midnight, I finally opened it. The sound of tearing paper echoed too loudly in the quiet house. Her handwriting was as precise as ever, though there were places where the ink had smeared, probably from tears soaking into the page as she wrote. Ethan. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. I just needed to put these words somewhere, and you're the only person who should hear them. What I did was unforgivable, not just the affair, but the lies, the betrayal of everything we built together. There's no excuse. No explanation that could ever justify it. I've spent every day since you left trying to understand why I did it. The only answer I can find is that I was selfish and insecure, and I took the best thing that ever happened to me completely for granted. Liam meant nothing. He was attention when I felt invisible, validation when I felt worthless. That's not a justification. It's just the sad truth of a woman who had everything and still wanted more. You deserved better. You deserved loyalty, honesty, and love that didn't waver. I failed you in every way that mattered. I lost my job. I'm sure Dylan told you. I couldn't focus. I couldn't stop thinking about everything I threw away. My parents have taken me in while I try to figure myself out. It's humbling, being 36 and sleeping in your childhood bedroom. I don't want you back, not because I don't love you, but because you deserve someone whole. Someone who would never hurt you the way I did. Please know this, you were never the problem. It was me. All of it. Be happy, Ethan. Build a good life. And know that somewhere in Chicago, I'm trying to become the kind of person who would have deserved you. Olivia. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. Then I went out to the garage, grabbed a metal trash can, and burned it. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. I did it because keeping her words meant clinging to the past. And the past was exactly what I'd left behind in Chicago. A year went by. The motorcycle shop flourished under Julian and me, growing enough that we launched our own line of custom parts. Riders started coming in from all over the western states. My social circle grew too, people from my running group, neighbors, friends of friends. I even went on a few dates, though none of them turned into anything serious. The renovations on my house were finally done. It no longer felt like a temporary landing spot. It felt like home, one shaped by my tastes and my needs, not a series of compromises. Julian noticed the shift in me one Friday evening as we closed up shop, the summer sun still hanging high in the Colorado sky. You're not running from ghosts anymore, he said as we drank beers on the deck behind the shop. You've settled in. No, I said, watching a red-tailed hawk circle the nearby field. I'm just running toward whatever comes next. What came next showed up without warning on a Tuesday afternoon in late September, almost 14 months after I'd left Chicago. I was elbow-deep in a vintage Harley engine when my phone rang. Gabriel's name popped up, and I smiled. We'd stayed close, talking regularly about business and life despite the distance. "Olivia's here," he said, skipping any build-up. His voice carried a tight edge. My hand froze on the greasy engine parts. My heart stumbled, then found its rhythm again. "What do you mean, here?" "In Denver. At the shop. She's asking for you." For a moment, the world tilted, then steadied. "Why?" "She didn't say," Gabriel replied quietly. "She looks different. Thinner. Sadder. Should I tell her where you are?" I thought about saying no. The divorce was final. Assets divided. Ties cut clean. There was no practical reason to see her again, no logical benefit to reopening wounds that had finally healed. But curiosity crept in. And a strange feeling that our story deserved something better than a hotel room ending. "Give her the address," I said. "I'll be here until 6. She showed up an hour later, standing just inside the entrance to second gear, scanning the busy shop floor like she wasn't sure she belonged there. I spotted her right away, though Gabriel hadn't exaggerated. She had changed. The confident, polished executive I married was gone. In her place stood someone quieter, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater. Her once perfect blonde hair had faded back to its natural sandy brown. Julian caught my eye and raised an eyebrow, a question we didn't need words for. I nodded, wiped my hands on a rag, and walked toward her, noticing how tightly she gripped her purse. "Olivia." She flinched at my voice, then offered a cautious smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ethan. You look good." "Thanks," I said evenly, studying her face. "What brings you to Denver?" She glanced around at my coworkers, men who knew pieces of my story from lunches and late beers, before looking back at me. "Could we talk somewhere private?" she asked. I nodded and led her into my office, shutting the door and muting the steady noise of grinders and engines from the shop floor. She sat down in the chair across from my desk, hands folded neatly in her lap, unusually still for someone who once filled every room with motion. "You've built something good here," she said, gesturing toward the window that overlooked the shop. "Gabriel told me business is really taking off." "It is," I said honestly, "but I doubt you flew all this way just to congratulate me on my success." She took a slow breath, her shoulders rising and falling under a plain blue sweater. "No. I'm moving to Seattle next month. New job. Fresh start." For the first time since she walked in, she looked straight at me. "I didn't want to leave the Midwest without seeing you one last time." "Why?" I asked. "Closure, maybe." Her eyes dropped to her left hand, where my ring had once been. "Or maybe I just needed to see with my own eyes that you're okay." "I am," I said, leaning against the desk instead of sitting behind it. "More than okay." She nodded, blinking quickly. "I'm glad. You deserve that." Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in tissue paper. "I've been carrying this around for months. I couldn't decide whether to mail it or throw it away." She held it out. "Now I can just give it to you." I took it carefully and unwrapped the tissue. Inside was my grandmother's sapphire ring, the same one she'd returned the night I told her I was leaving Chicago. The deep blue stone caught the office light, unchanged, untouched by everything that had fallen apart around it. "I kept thinking about this ring," she said softly. "About how you saved it all those years. How you planned to give it to me. And how I destroyed that future before it even had a chance." "Olivia." "Please," she said gently. "Let me finish." She straightened in her chair, pulling herself together like someone slipping on armor. "I'm not here to ask for another chance. I know that door is closed. I came to apologize properly. Face to face. And to say something I should have said a year ago. I waited, rolling the ring between my fingers, feeling its weight in more ways than one. "Thank you," she said. "For not trying to ruin me in the divorce when you easily could have. For choosing integrity when I gave you every reason not to. And for showing me what a good man actually looks like." She stood, smoothing her jeans with hands that trembled just slightly. "That's all. I won't bother you again." As she reached for the door, the words slipped out before I could stop them. "I hope Seattle treats you well." She paused and looked back, offering a sad smile heavy with shared history. "I hope so too. But even if it doesn't, I'll be okay. That's something this whole mess taught me." She nodded once. "I'm stronger than I thought." After she left, Julian leaned into the doorway, curiosity written all over his face but tempered with respect. "Everything good?" I was still staring at the sapphire ring, thinking about second chances and fresh starts, about how life almost never follows the path we imagine. "Yeah," I said finally. "Just a ghost from the past." "You want to talk about it?" I slid the ring into my desk drawer and shut it. "No. But I could really use that beer you promised." He grinned, visibly relieved. "Coming right up." That night, I sat on my back deck, watching stars appear over the Denver skyline, brighter and more numerous than they ever looked back in Chicago. Olivia's visit had stirred emotions I thought were long buried. Not love. Not longing. Something quieter. Understanding, maybe. Or forgiveness, not for her sake, but for my own. Holding on to anger is exhausting. I hadn't realized how much weight I was still carrying until it finally lifted. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe Morgan, the veterinarian I'd met at a friend's barbecue the month before. We'd gone out twice, easy evenings, good conversation, polite kisses, and mutual plans to do it again. "Still on for Saturday?" She wrote. Simple. Direct. Very Chloe. I smiled as I typed back. "Absolutely. Looking forward to it." The past was finally where it belonged, behind me. No longer an open wound, just a closed chapter. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibility, like the Colorado mountains at sunrise. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to meet it without fear or hesitation. Life goes on. Sometimes, it even gets better.